Welcome to this session where I'm going to talk about Service Fabric, roadmap, and our overview. I'm in a bit of a warm-up session, really, to a series of talks that follow after this that I'll link to as I go through this talk, that we go more in depth to how you use Service Fabric today. We also look at upcoming releases of Service Fabric, like Service Fabric Mesh, and we're also diving into how we use and build it from a developer perspective. But at the end of this talk, I want to effectively give you an idea of what Service Fabric is. How many people use Service Fabric today? So you've got quite a few people. How many people have no idea what Service Fabric is? Oh, okay. And mostly I want to come out of this with a concept of sort of the roadmap of where it's going. Ultimately, what it's all about. Most of what's happening now when we talk about journey to the cloud is that people are thinking about how they're actually trying to build a global service. And effectively, the conversation's changed pretty much over the last 2 years now, where everyone realizes now that the de facto approach for building services is a microservices approach, where it's kind of become the standard way where you decouple an application down into smaller pieces of code, deploy them as independent pieces of code that then communicate between them all. And that means effectively that you need a platform to be able to build those applications on. And that's exactly what Service Fabric is. But of course, in order to do that, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of difficulties with building microservice application. There's independent deployments, there's communication between the services, there's rollouts and upgrades and diagnostics. You better have good telemetry built into your platform so you understand how to diagnose individual services that are running. You have security issues. You have to figure out how you can do orchestrate. You want a platform that figures out the best place to run your services on. And effectively, Microsoft went through this journey itself. It moved from box products to the cloud, and it built a platform on the way to achieve this. So, a microservices approach is definitely how you build services, how you build things that run inside the cloud. But of course, there's complexity involved in there. There's a distributed systems approach of things, and you need a platform to help you. Service Fabric is the platform that we built inside Microsoft that allows you to target and build services that run at scale from a microservices approach. We use it to host and run huge numbers of our own workloads, and we gave it away for free about 3 years ago when we first released it all. It's been running it's been GA'd as a product for a couple of years now. And the platform effectively spans everything from the developer technologies, where you can build an application, you can build a set of microservices, we provide you built-in runtimes, we build you communication stacks, all the way through to the operational side, how you do deployments and rollouts and upgrades, how you do telemetry around those applications. It's an orchestrator in that it makes decisions about where things run. You can scale the underlying physical architecture, the infrastructure itself, to add new machines and scale down machines to create a cluster. And so we talk about really that there are 3 pillars: how you build applications, how you deploy applications, and how you operate applications on this platform. Because in the end, you're a customer who wants to figure out business problems and how you build an application that runs at scale, not build a platform itself. The platform actually can host it in all sorts of different environments. You can run it on your local dev box. You can host it in your own data center. We have a version called Service Fabric Standalone that you can run inside your own hardware, inside wherever you have your data center with your own VMs or physical hardware. We have a version which we call Azure Service Fabric today that allows you to set up a cluster. And then I'll touch on another version that we've released called Service Fabric Mesh. So when you look at those pillars, build, deploy, operate, in the build pillar, we have a set of tooling that we integrate with from Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code when you're building .NET applications, with Eclipse and also VS Code when you look at the Java side. We're equally invested in making Java a first-class citizen. Service Fabric runs on Windows, it runs on Linux. On our Linux side, we tend to focus on building Java applications inside there, but of course, increasingly, we see a lot of .NET Core there. So we see a lot of people focusing on Service Fabric with .NET Core apps running on Linux, as well as .NET Core apps building on Windows itself. And then the whole approach is really that you can bring any programming framework of your choice and run that. Of course, we provide you reliable access, reliable services, as programming models to help you build those microservice architectures yourself, as runtimes that we include as part of Service Fabric, which is why we talk about it as a microservice application platform rather than just an orchestrator of things. In the end, you need more than just an orchestrator in order to achieve building a global service. We look at the deployment side of these things. Increasingly, this is focused around our DevOps, and I'm going to show you some tools around here, how you can take your code and you deploy it through a pipeline. We deploy it through DevOps pipelines. Jenkins and Maven and Gradle is what we look at on the Linux side of things. We integrate with third parties such as Octopus Deploy. And then we have other environments such as Azure Dev Test Labs that allows you to stand up a temporary cluster and do all your testing inside of that, and then you can sort of shut down the cluster overnight to save money. So we integrate Service Fabric with the Azure offerings. And then inside the Operate, increasingly focusing on the diagnostics and the telemetry that comes from your actual deployment. It's incredibly important to focus on your DevOps, your monitoring and diagnostics, and your security as your basics as you build a service before you even get going to building the application architecture and everything else like this. So there, Log Analytics, Azure App Insights are the two that we have from telemetry that are built into Azure, and we've integrated with a lot of third parties as well, including Dynatrace, Datadog, New Relic, App Dynamics. All of those are available in the Azure Marketplace. You can download and install as alternatives for looking at telemetry and diagnostics that come from the applications that you build and deploy. So let's look inside of what are the offerings we have. I mentioned that Service Fabric runs anywhere, and that can be done with a number of different choices of how you want to approach and build and where you want to run your applications. So our standalone version allows you to think about three things. You have to think about standing up your physical hardware, standing up the cluster, and standing up your applications. But you get full control and benefit wherever that runs, whether it's in VMs inside your deployments or whether it's physical hardware. If you want to move to, and so you can take that and actually you can run it in other Azure cloud providers. And we have a lot of customers who run our on-premise products, and it's been very successful in a number of deployments, particularly with, say, financial companies who have a big investment already in a data center where they want to run their services. Inside Azure, we have Azure Service Fabric. That allows you to build a cluster. We've had this out for a couple of years now. You can build a cluster environment and deploy a Service Fabric application into that cluster. Service Fabric is still entirely free here. You just get paid for the resources that you're given, and you can scale out an underlying VMs that you see, but the platform gets deployed inside those set of VMs. We take care of the patching of the VMs themselves, the patching of the Service Fabric runtime inside there. You could auto-scale out that cluster, scale it back in. We hook it up to diagnostics for you. We integrate with the underlying Service Fabric infrastructure, so we control reboots of the machines so they don't affect your applications, and do a whole bunch of intelligence to make your clusters run scalable and flexible and can be able to take advantage of Azure as a platform. But of course, you actually get to see the machines, you actually get to see the infrastructure, and so it's your responsibility to think about the scale of how you scale out your cluster. Both those products are in GA. One that we just released as preview very recently, we announced it at Build, it was a public preview that came out in July, is what we call Azure Service Fabric Mesh. Now here, you don't get to see any VMs. Effectively, what this is that we've taken Service Fabric and we've hosted it. Microsoft has, in terms of we stand up massive clusters of machines, thousands of cores, and now all you have to do is build an application and deploy it into this environment. So effectively, you're just building applications. You don't actually have to think about how you manage anything to do with the actual cluster itself. You've all enjoyed the excitement of building a microservice-based architecture, and then you can simply say, scale up the number of instances of your application that's running, or add new services to your application that gets deployed. So we're very excited by this because it takes away more of the complexity of managing the environment itself. But of course, all of this is a spectrum of where you want to be. If you want to run a particular bespoke VM image of your own choice, you have to go for our Azure Service Fabric cluster version of that. And we have some customers who want to do that. If you want to run some particular virus checkers and things like that of your choice on the machines, you need access to the machine, yes, you go for that offering. So, but increasingly, as we see people move to wanting to take on more managed serverless offerings, Azure Service Fabric fits very well into that space. And we're pretty excited about having that on our spectrum of capabilities. And I'm going to dive into this a little bit more and talk about and give you a demo of what that looks like. But let me just kind of kick off with a demo because I wanted to show how Service Fabric is pretty well integrated with Azure DevOps. We've long integrated with... Is it switching over? There we go. We've long integrated with Azure DevOps, VSTS, in terms of having build and pipeline tasks inside that. And then just recently, a few months ago, we actually just integrated with Azure DevOps project. And I just wanted to show you this because it's a great way of just trying to learn how to get started with setting up your deployment pipeline, and you can then sort of modify it afterwards. So this is Azure DevOps. It allows you to choose a number of different programming frameworks and languages that you come up from, Java, .NET. And at the moment, if you pick the Java, the .NET one, you can choose the type of framework that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use ASP.NET Core. And then here, you can actually say, I want to choose a Service Fabric cluster. And now what I'm able to do is I can go in and find my existing DevOps solution inside here. So I'm sort of mfussel here. I can set up a new project name. I can call this Ignite 20. And what I'm able to do now is that I'm able to actually look at and deploy a full DevOps pipeline that will put a sample project inside here and can provision a cluster for me. Now, it's a little bit limited that the clusters you can keep through this at the moment. There's only a few versions of the VMs you can choose, and it has a full version of all the Windows SKUs inside here, but it has all the locations. So I can choose, for example, to choose the latest SKU with Windows and choose a DV3 machines and hit OK to this. And then if I hit done here, this will actually set up me a DevOps environment. It'll set me up a Service Fabric cluster and hook those two together and do a deployment of an application into that one. So here's one I did earlier. This is one I did for Ignite 10, I called it. And this set up a cluster. The actual cluster it set up here was this 3-machine cluster. So it just sets up this 3-machine cluster. The advantage of this effectively is that you can just sort of test it out, get yourself going, you can blow away the cluster and hook up your own one afterwards with it. But effectively, it set up a repo here, and in this repo, it just pulls in our sample.NET application project, which is this voting app. If you've never seen this before, this voting app is one that allows you to vote on categories of your choice in terms of things that you want to see, and you can put voting options inside here. And so it pulls in this voting data, and then it deploys this into the environment. It puts up builds pipelines for me here, so it creates a build pipeline. You see, when I check this in, and now when I do updates inside my code, inside my repo, it'll actually pick up that build and a kicker for build for me and push it down through the build process. And the build process consists of a number of tasks. You'll see that it pulls down NuGet packages, copies files, and then sets up and configures a Service Fabric manifest. And what's so great about this is it does a lot of the automatic versioning for you. So when you deploy new versions of Service Fabric applications, you have to change the manifest for the versioning files. The manifests, the build tasks inside here will change those versions for you. So this is a great way to get started. You can then go off and do look at the releases. I can kick off a new release here. I can go off and create a new release and kick this off in order to take a particular build here. The last build I did, which was that one a couple of days ago, I can choose an environment I want to trigger this on, and I can kick off and create a new build and kick that off. So a great way to get started, and just showing how getting DevOps going inside your pipeline is one of the key elements around how you think about setting up your service that you want to hook into with Service Fabric. Let me just switch back here to slides. So what we see is that there's actually this journey that everyone has to take from they're going towards their digital transformation. Typically, you may start with some existing code, and increasingly what that means is that you may start with some existing code or you're building new, but this journey that we see today is that people are taking, and what people host today, effectively things inside VMs, and we call that rehosting. But increasingly, we're actually seeing modernization of your applications where you're taking existing code and deploying it into an environment like Service Fabric, where it gives you the scale of your application and the agility to deploy and write out new changes to those and start transforming your application towards a microservices architecture approach. You can either do that on Service Fabric with running executables, and we see that a lot, or increasingly you can start to deploy things inside containers, either Windows containers or Linux containers, or you can mix and match to both. That's the beauty of Service Fabric. You can bring processes and containers and run them side by side together. So we really kind of talk about two main journeys inside Service Fabric: the journey of modernization of existing code, where you're moving things, so you're taking advantage of a scaled-out platform. And the classic examples here are that you might have seen multiple deployments today inside your environment, 5 machines here, 5 machines here, 5 machines here. And you can consolidate those all down and deploy them into one environment with one DevOps pipeline, with one telemetry system, and putting all the data from all of those. And then effectively you're getting a cost consolidation exercise, running things at higher density. Typically, we see with all those small VM deployments today with those single apps that the machines might be just running at 5% CPU. But when you consolidate and run them all down in a single environment, like you run inside Service Fabric, you can run the machines at 40 or 50% CPU, much higher capacities. Of course, the other journey we see with Service Fabric is that you have all of the benefits, or you have the advantage of building brand new applications. And here you'll hear the term building cloud native applications. This is where you can start off with greenfield application, come in directly with that microservices architecture approach, and sort of build new pieces of code and deploy those without having to kind of pick up some of your legacy code and sort of decide how you migrate that forward. So those are the two journeys that we particularly focus on inside Service Fabric, and this fits into an overall bigger picture within Azure, where we see a lot of this happening with customers today. We've used Service Fabric for years to build high-scale services. We started off with Azure databases 10 years ago, and now increasingly Cosmos DB, Event Hub, Event Grid, all services that are used inside Azure and even outside Azure, like Dynamics 365, Office 365 as well uses it. So we harden our own platform. We use it a lot ourselves. It runs on millions of cores. We launch tens of thousands of cores daily, and the scale it runs at is pretty big. It's certainly in terms of where we see the whole platform growing inside of this. We also have a large number of customers. We've seen tremendous growth in the last year of customers who are moving their applications and building new on top of us. All these customers are sort of running in production today across a range of industries. And it's kind of quite good to look at the types of scenarios that those all fall into, because Service Fabric is a general purpose platform. You can sort of host any type of service that you want on there, whether you come in from a Windows or a Linux side or whatever your direction you come from. But there are some sort of particular themes that we see. First, we see quite a lot of sort of media, sort of gaming side applications. A couple of examples of that is Next Games launched a big game recently called The Walking Dead. It's a sort of virtual reality game. You walk around with your cell phone, zombies attack you, you fight back at them in real time with whatever's lying around with you in terms of things that you can fight the zombies with. They run it on thousands of cores running inside a microservices architecture. Tencent is a huge game provider inside China. They took Service Fabric and they hosted it all on their own servers inside and hosted lots of legacy games, lots of Windows legacy games that you can run at scale inside that. In terms of building mission-critical apps, we see companies like Societe Generale build and run training applications. Wolters Kluwer builds tax preparation software. Tax preparation time of the year, we see them scale out their cluster. They're responsible for doing all the tax returns critical to their customers in order to getting them down, particularly in a time-bound way that they have to deploy, get all these tax returns with thousands of different rules for each one of their customers. Probably about 40% of all the deployments in Azure run on Service Fabric that are IoT deployments, a huge number of them. It's sort of an ideal platform for IoT. It can ingest lots of telemetry data through things like IoT Hub that comes out eventually through Event Hub. You can build microservices that ingest all that data. The design of our reliable services and our stateful programming models allow you to kind of take that and do lots of compute on it quickly. We have other low latency apps that effectively allow you to, things like BMW have an application that allows you to track the location of your car and gives you updates about your schedule in terms of when you're trying to leave, and even lets you try and find your car if you've got where you park it. And then we get sort of retail type applications. Alaska Airlines does a ticketing system. ASOS is a big clothing provider. Their whole payment system is built on top of Service Fabric, how they do all the payments when you buy anything that runs there. So those are some of the applications that we see. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to sort of dive down. That's about a brief overview of what Service Fabric is. I'm going to sort of dive down into the roadmap of what's coming, because this is sort of the exciting part. And I'm going to do this both in sort of a long-term and a short-term view of things. Long-term is like the arc of direction of where we're going, and then short-term is what we'd expect in the release that's coming up. ultimately, we're very focused on still getting Service Fabric into all sorts of different environments, whether that's on-premise or the cloud. And so you've seen that recently Service Fabric has been integrated into Azure Stack, certainly as we deploy Azure standalone there. And we're going to go deeper integration in there as we move along in terms of making sure that Service Fabric not only gets the standalone version deployed inside it, but will integrate with Azure Stack so that you can actually stand up Service Fabric applications inside there. Inside, when we look at Azure, we have an arc where we're still making sure that we achieve availability zones and regional clusters. Availability zones is sort of the most immediate one. By the time we get to the end of this year, we want to make sure that we have availability zones running across the clusters that you deploy inside Azure. If you're not familiar with availability zones, within some regions there are multiple data centers inside there, and availability zone spans physical data centers in a region to give you high levels of availability. And then, of course, we want to focus on making sure that we get Windows and Linux containers running inside the same cluster. This is something where effectively, having Linux containers running on Windows is where we're working closely with the Windows team. And by taking advantage of that, we'll be able to launch Linux containers running on a Windows environment. So then we'll be able to have Linux and Windows containers running together inside the same cluster. So that's something that we continue to focus on as a team. But in the immediate short term, in our next release that comes out, we're having a release that's going to be scheduled over the next few weeks. Release updating the next version for Windows Server 1803, which has a whole bunch of fixes and support inside there for containers. You'll see Red Hat Linux as an option available for building yourself a cluster inside the portal. We'll provide you the ability to have isolated networks. There are 2 networking modes today inside your cluster where you can have your applications use the actual ports and IP addresses of the host machine. Or you can take advantage of what's called an open network, where you deploy a single network across all your cluster where every application gets their own IP address. And then the isolated networks allow you to bound an individual application with inside its own VNet. So it gives you a multi-tenant aspect now, where my application now is isolated within its own network. A very interesting piece of work as well that we sort of kicked off a few months ago that really kind of helps in our Java direction is integration with a thing called BOSH. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about BOSH. You're going to have a look at this, but think of it as a deployment platform that allows you to do release platform and deployment and lifecycle for distributed systems. So this is very well integrated into Cloud Foundry, if you're aware of that. So we're doing a piece of work where we can take BOSH as a platform and use that for deploying Service Fabric across a large number of machines, and then BOSH does the rolling updates of Service Fabric onto those different environments. So now effectively, as well as using the PowerShell that we provide, you can use BOSH to deploy it onto your machines, but BOSH is actually very well integrated with deploying it across other cloud providers if you want to deploy it into Amazon or GKE or one of the other cloud providers, or actually into a Cloud Foundry environment. So that's kind of a very interesting direction that we're taking this, because it's all about opening up Service Fabric to be deployed in multiple different environments. And then finally, one thing that we put into this release is a thing called Event Store. Event Store, actually, we did release it in our current release, which is 6.3, but we've now integrated with the Service Fabric Explorer. And this is exciting because all the events that happen inside your cluster, within your applications, get pushed into this event store. So you can see when I last deployed an application, when I last did an application upgrade, when I last had the runtime upgrade on my machine. And we're going to add lots more of this diagnostics. So all of this will get pushed out through Azure Monitoring. Hopefully, I've got a little demo of this on this machine. But we'll at least look at this. I'm just getting this thing up and running inside here. So I just want to go and look at my local cluster here a moment. If I go into my local cluster here, I just want to show you that there's an event store service. Okay. I haven't got my event store service running on this machine. But if you were to get the next build that comes out, you'll see an event store service running on this machine here. And when you start to dive into any one of these different nodes here, you'll be able to see this events tabs here. And this event tab here will actually show you all those events for both the node level here and at the application level and the overall cluster level. And now you'll be able to do a query around those events and see these events here that get displayed for events that happen inside your cluster. It answers a lot of the questions that we had from people that go, when was the last time I deployed my application? When was the last time my runtime got upgraded inside my cluster? So we're pretty excited about providing more diagnostics views into the actual cluster and the operations that happen within inside it as you're running your service. If you want to dive more into what's happening of our current products and have best practices, there's a great talk that's happening tomorrow, which is how to build. Actually, they haven't updated my slide. There's a slide here. This is there's a talk tomorrow which is all about best practices for building on top of Service Fabric clusters. It's actually on Thursday afternoon. This is the one that's focused on our developer side of things. So on the monitoring and diagnostics side, those events, you'll see those events come out from our event store, pushed into Azure Monitor. Of course, we continue to provide diagnostics through App Insights. You get diagnostics out of your container deployments. And of course, as I mentioned, integration with all our third parties. So diagnostics and monitoring is a key area that we're going to spend more time of our investment in so that you can actually see more operations that happen inside your cluster and be able to diagnose things more at runtime. Let's dive into our next roadmap. That was talking about clusters. Let's talk about where we are with open source. We open sourced Service Fabric earlier this year, back in March. At that time, we did a huge chunk of what we moved into Service Fabric into a repo. We're very excited about it. It got a lot of noise. It got a lot of attention. Since then, actually, we've moved everything out now. There was a fair amount of managed code that we hadn't finished at that point in time. So now we've moved everything out, including our reliable collections libraries and other kind of base class libraries. So you can fully build all the source code now is out available inside our repo, and you can still and you can use that to build Linux images. And what's up next is, because it was so deeply integrated with our build systems, it's taken us a bit of time to unwind our build for Windows, but we'll have Windows builds coming out inside our repo in the next few months. So you can actually start to do Windows builds as well as Linux builds for the Service Fabric runtime. So you'll be able to see that all built from our open source repo. And then eventually, of course, our goal is to make sure that we develop everything inside the open and make sure that we have a build environment for our continuous integration there running. And so we'll have daily builds and have the development inside the open. That's kind of the path and long-term roadmap that we have for that. You'll probably see that at the beginning of next year by the time we get to that. So let's jump to the developer roadmap. Our developer roadmap is all about how we want any language, any framework to be able to build your applications with a microservices concept on top of Service Fabric. What we've got done here to a large degree is we want to open up Service Fabric to more languages and more runtimes. And so we've transitioned to an approach of whereby we're providing you libraries now instead of just runtimes that you have to derive against. So today we have a reliable services runtime. In order to build stateful services, you have to use that particular runtime. What we've switched that to now is a library. So I can take libraries, for example, for our reliable collections, and I can include that as part of any framework that I want to run inside. We've integrated to begin with .NET Core and with Spring, so now I can effectively just build any .NET Core application, and then I can just bring in my Service Fabric libraries, like my reliable collection libraries there, and then take advantage of using the stateful data structures that they have, so to be able to enhance those applications. So that's kind of the direction we're trying to go. Rather than making you have to build it, bind against a particular runtime. That way, we can open up to Spring as a language, integrate with Spring as a framework. We can have Node. We can eventually do Python as a direction around that. The other direction we're making sure we go is trying to provide intelligent routing and connectivity across the whole deployment for your application. We recognize today that there's a lot of complexity in effectively discovering and finding an application and communicating with it. We do a lot today there to provide you communication frameworks, the discovery of those services. But invariably, people still have to sort of build a front-end gateway on top of their application. So the intelligent routing is where we're making sure that we provide a gateway built into the actual runtime itself, a gateway that can be exposed out to the external internet, and it can do intelligent routing of policy-based routing of where messages come in, and you can say, if a request comes in, look at this particular attribute, send it to this particular service, and then you can communicate seamlessly between the services inside the cluster or the environment that you're running in. This is actually all being built on top of Envoy. So Envoy is the actual reverse proxy we've taken and built on top of this, and of course we've been doing work, for example, to port that over to Windows as well as Linux. The other thing as part of our developer roadmap is we're very keen to make sure that services and applications have identity. This makes it a lot easier for you to write an application, have identity associated with the service. The service can then take its identity and it can reach out to Key Vault, get hold of secrets that it needs or key tokens it needs to talk to another service. So say, for example, you want to talk to a Cosmos DB database. Now it's just a matter of taking the identity of the service that's running, getting its authentication with Key Vault, and then presenting those tokens to Cosmos DB for authentication side of things. So that will make the security and the authentication of things much, much simpler. This is generally a theme across all of Azure that you'll see. So that's the roadmap. In terms of the upcoming release, in our release that's coming up, you'll have the reliable collection of libraries running for .NET Core and Java. They will also, not only will they persist state locally, but they will also have an in-memory versions of them to give you higher throughput for those sort of volatile scenarios. We're releasing our backup and restore service. This has been in preview for a while now. The backup and restore service allows you to take and deploy a service inside your cluster, and it will back up the state of existing Service Fabric applications, your stateful applications, into a remote store. And then if you have a disaster recovery scenario and you have to rebuild your cluster and you have to recover all your state from your stateful applications again, you can do that automatically through the backup and restore service. And included as part of that, we have a data viewer and a data editor that allows you to take the images, the backup and restore snapshots there, and you can edit them before you restore them. So we're pretty excited about this because it sort of completes the story now from a GA perspective of how you have the full cycle of having stateful applications and the backup and restore. We've built a reliable local Service Fabric volume disk. What's cool about this effectively is that Service Fabric is a storage technology. Not only do we provide you stateful compute through data structures like reliable dictionary and reliable queue, but we've hooked that up to just a local volume disk. So if you want to do just file I/O operations and save some data to a local disk and then have that replicated to other machines, you can. And that means things can take advantage of that do file I/O. So our goal there is that we want to look at other types of storage technologies, and they can use that volume drive in order to provide high availability to them. This high availability is local to your cluster, high throughput, and low latency. I mentioned the application gateway. That will be in the next release that comes up. It'll be limited functionality to begin with. It just focuses on traffic routing between those things, between your services. And then, importantly, we actually have introduced a new resource application model, which we call a Service Fabric resource model. And the goal of this is driven by Service Fabric Mesh. And Service Fabric Mesh elevates your building of an application up to just the application level. If you look at the resource model today that you build applications with, it encompasses a very powerful set of characteristics that allow you to actually change things as part of the cluster as well as the application. So this resource model basically makes it much simpler for you to think about how you just build, just like ARM does, as a set of resources. Just think of there's a set of resources inside Service Fabric. I can declare them, and then I can just stitch them together. We can dive a lot more into the whole developer story in this session here, building resilient microservices. That will be a session that we run tomorrow afternoon. They'll dive here deeply into our .NET Core integration, reliable dictionaries, reliable services side of things, and the whole Java side of how we integrated those reliable dictionaries with JCache, and you'll see demos around how we've done the work there on doing Java deployments and the integration with Maven in our tooling pipeline. Going back to those that resource model, so effectively Service Fabric ways of buildings. We have our XML manifest native model today, which is the one that you may be very familiar with if you use Service Fabric today. The resource model, though, makes it a much more application-centric, simplified approach to building a set of resources that you then just stitch together. And then we have the Docker Compose that we introduced last year. That's for anyone who wants to sort of move some legacy applications over, well, I shouldn't say legacy applications, just from Docker Compose over to deploy it in these runtime. The key element here is that the resource model is the one that actually allows you to span across all the different versions of Service Fabric because it's centered on the most simple, I should say, which is Service Fabric Mesh. And from there, you can run across all the different environments around this. So Service Fabric resources, what are they? They're a simple declarative way to deploy and manage applications. They're individual resources. So for example, you have application as a resource, service as a resource, network as a resource, and you stitch them all together, and then you can deploy them into a Service Fabric mesh environment, or you can deploy them into a classic Service Fabric cluster you have running today. And we're very excited because effectively these resources are, think of that they get translated, they become effectively just ARM-based resources. So the whole point of this really, more than anything that we're trying to drive, is that you can now build microservice applications with ARM as the driving approach to describing that application and deploying that into your Service Fabric mesh run environment. ARM effectively makes it much simpler for you to declare the resources, declare the application, and then do updates inside all of that. So mesh, what is it? It's a serverless platform. You don't manage any of the infrastructure. You just simply build applications with an ARM-type model. We have integration with Visual Studio tooling to help you build those applications. I'll show you a little demo around this side of things. I can take that application, I can deploy it inside an environment. Now my upgrades are just simply doing ARM updates. You know, we, Microsoft, deploy a large cluster of machines in which mesh runs inside there. Mesh is really microservice applications as a service. It's a purely serverless integration of this world. And so we're pretty excited that it sort of brings it into the family of running long-running, highly available, highly reliable microservices applications in the cloud for you. In our preview, as we look at our roadmap for mesh, we're effectively doing many of the things I talked about in terms of developer roadmap and the resource model built into the actual mesh applications you build, including identity for the service, putting secrets from the key vault, those routing rules to be able to send messages between the actual services that you've deployed inside your Service Fabric mesh, taking advantage of the collections. Importantly, being able to bring your own network, because now, inside this world of things, you have some existing resources that you want to hook up to, like your SQL Server database. And then we'll have great tooling, both from the DevOps pipeline, Visual Studio pipeline, and then, of course, all the data and diagnostics pushed into different diagnostics environments like Application Insights. In terms of our immediate release, we're going to release Service Fabric Mesh on a very frequent basis. And you'll just see that in the release, we have a public preview out there now that you can try out. We're going to do a release again within the next few weeks. And there we're going to provide the auto-scaling rules for mesh applications as a resource type for doing secrets, and resource type for being able to set up multiple ingress endpoints. So if I deploy an application, I can expose multiple external load balancers onto my service endpoints through the Azure load balancer onto my actual application itself. I encourage you to dive into this talk here, which will happen tomorrow. Chaka will be in this talk Wednesday, where he'll dive deep into Service Fabric Mesh. He'll show you hundreds of demos. He'll show you how you deploy mesh applications. He'll dive into the resource model more, show you ARM, and basically show how it's a wonderful environment for building applications that you can deploy and run at scale. I'm going to show you mesh, but I'm going to show you it through a journey that we take, going back to that modernization journey. It's amazing how many customers that we see now who are looking at their .NET and their Java world, and they're saying, how do I modernize my applications generally? And the modernization, we've been telling this story for a couple of years now about how you take existing code and you can deploy this inside a Service Fabric cluster or environment first, just to get all the benefits of upgrades and deployments and diagnostics. And then you can start to add new little services around. It's just a journey that you take, but increasingly that we see this happen with the modernization side of things frequently. And that's because people now can deploy things in the cloud much faster. You can deploy, you want to be able to have a cost consolidation exercise. We actually even see this journey happening with cloud services as well. Microsoft IT, has an application called Pay, and it deals with all our partner supplier paying. Today they run that in 4 different environments on 18 cloud services that they deploy. And they consolidated all of those 18 different cloud services down to a single Service Fabric 5 machine cluster with each one of those 5 environments. They saved themselves 87% of their money. They were spending about $23,000 a month, and they reduced that down to like $3,000 a month in terms of their deployments. So even sort of the cloud service modernization, as well as sort of existing application modernization, is this journey that we're seeing. Let me show you a demo of Mesh on this journey of modernization, and that way it can hopefully kind of will give you an appreciation of what this looks like. So here I have an existing application, and this application is an application that we built. It's a smart hotel application. It's a hotel check-in booking in system application. It's built with a web application. This is ASP.NET. It has a WCF application, and it talks to a SQL Server database. And in order to move this to the cloud, there's a couple of choices I can do. From the data side, I can move the data through SQL migration services, and I can take advantage of a managed database, or I can take advantage of SQL managed instances and sort of host my database as a managed instance running in the cloud. And then I have to look at my application. It's like, well, what do I do with this? Well, what we're going to done here with Service Fabric Mesh is I can right-click on my web application, and I can do here, add, and inside this inside here, add, I can do add container orchestrator. And what this means now is that I can choose I can choose the container orchestrator and deploy these things into. Now, in this particular case now, let's see, hang on, I have probably loaded up the wrong project here. Let me just go back here a moment. Well, what you would see inside here is the fact that I can deploy this inside a mesh application. I'm not too sure why I've gone inside here. So instead, if I take this inside here and I do add inside here and do container orchestrator in this project here, you'll see that I have this, I have sort of a choice inside here of my Service Fabric Mesh. I'm not too sure why this is reset at the moment. But I'm able to take this application, I can scaffold it into an environment. I would end up with a project like this here, where I have a Service Fabric Mesh scaffolding inside this. And here I would have my web application, my WCF application now brought in. And what this does is effectively adds in a Docker file to take all that code, put it inside a Docker image. It builds a Docker image. I can debug that locally. I can have a rich debugging experience inside all of that. And then I'm able to take this application and I'm able to deploy it into the cloud. So either through Visual Studio here, I can go into my actual deployment here and actually can say publish. And now, inside this publish here, I can actually choose my my particular subscription I want into, my region, my resource group that I want to publish into. And importantly, I'll take my containers that I built and put all my code into and publish them through Azure Container Registry. But of course, this is just an ARM-based model. And what I wanted to show that was key to all of this is that when I built this application, really the great value of Azure Service Fabric Mesh is that I can incorporate the mesh application as part of any other Azure ARM deployment. So here I have a set of parameters I hand into an ARM deployment. Here I'm deploying a set of resources, which is my SQL Server database. But I'm also deploying a Service Fabric Mesh network here, which basically punches out and gives me an ingress endpoint. But importantly here, I have my application that consists of a couple of services inside here. These were the two that I just effectively pulled in as part of a Service Fabric Mesh project. And if you look at the properties inside the web application here, you'll see that I'm able to describe this as a particular image that gets built. So this gets containerized and run inside Service Fabric Mesh. I can set up environment variables. I can set up app insight key that I talk to. I can set up a set of resources here, so I can limit the resources for my container image. And then I can actually set up the number of instances that get run. So when I do this publish, deploy into this particular environment, all I'm actually doing is I'm pushing out an ARM template like this. So I can actually do a deploy ARM template itself, providing all those parameters. I can kick that off. And actually, if I kick this off and provide this particular script that allows you to, ask you to provide the admin password, so that you're going to set up. So I was going to provide some password. It'll kick off the script. We'll see how that one goes. But what I'll end up with effectively is that if I go to, if I go here, this is my application that I've deployed. It's my check-in application. I can see any one of these particular customers that they've checked in. But I've looked at this deployment here. You'll see now that I took those applications, I containerized them, I deployed them inside Service Fabric Mesh called this registration application. I deployed my SQL Server database inside here, the server with its database. If I drill in here to this registration service, you'll see that now I have my WCF application, my web application containerized and deployed. You'll see I have a couple of replicas and instances inside here. If I click on this services view, I can actually see this from a services view. I can drill down and actually even go to the details of the actual individual replicas themselves and actually get down to the detailed logs that I see for the individual application inside here that come out and do diagnostics around all this. So now I've got my application running up in the cloud. I'm able to, if you look at this other Visual Studio project here, what I did was I pulled in and modernized this one by adding a new service inside here. So I right-clicked on my project here. I did add new service. I did add a new Service Fabric service inside here. And so the next stage now is I added this registration KPI service. This scaffold into ASP.NET Core, a middleware component that I can use reliable collections inside there. And you'll see that for this particular new web API service that I added, took advantage of the reliable collections library that we get included. So if I scroll down, you'll see that I've added a new service here that gets a list of data using a reliable dictionary. And in this reliable dictionary, I'm storing some booking aggregate information. So it tracks how frequently someone has stayed at my hotel, keeps that in a reliable data structure. You know, this is our reliable collections pulled in as a library. So I didn't have to do any more than simply add that as a new ASP.NET service, and it was integrated as part of that. And then when I look at the actual application itself, you'll see now I've added this new tab here called Display KPI, which actually takes advantage of loading up the new service, talking to that, and giving me the aggregate information of where a customer has been staying, how frequently inside my hotel. So the benefit effectively is that you're able now to host these containerized applications in a serverless environment. I can go back to my resource model here. I can change the number of instance counts inside here. And if I redeploy this inside here, you see I have another version of a web application deployed here where I actually have multiple instances of my application running that I deployed earlier. In this particular case, I don't. But I can deploy my, update my instances, and then you'll see a new instance of this thing running. So it's very easy to be able to say, I just changed the number of instances, or I wanted to have a new secret just by changing my definition through ARM. So we're pretty excited about Mesh because it now sort of frees you entirely from the infrastructure management side of things. It takes you down to this world. And this is the future where we see application development. You build applications. It consists of any runtime, any code that you want to put together in sort of a polyglot application. You deploy these inside a Service Fabric cluster environment, or you can deploy them inside Service Fabric Mesh. You can enhance them with reliable collections. If you run inside Service Fabric Mesh, it will allow you to bring your own network to hook them all up with, and then everything is connected through intelligent routing around that through the use of our built-in reverse proxy capabilities. And you can deploy them inside any environment of your choice. So key takeaways, because I'm running out of time here, effectively is that you really have to start to think about building Microsoft architectures. You want to be able to run them anywhere. Service Fabric enables you to do that. It takes you through this modernization journey, allows you to build cloud-native apps, and hopefully it makes you happy, it makes your customers happy, and it helps you develop business value, and that you're not trying to build a platform on which to build your service itself. There's a lot of great sessions. I pointed out several of them throughout this talk. The only one I didn't talk to so far is that there's this talk on Thursday, which is about take your next step for Windows Server container orchestration. We're going to dive into just Service Fabric and the container orchestration side of it all. There's some other great talks here that are done to think about how the containers and modernization side, and generally. The last one here is an example of a Service Fabric app built and born for the cloud that a customer talks through their journey. And that's my brief 45-minute run view of our roadmap, and hopefully it gave you a great appreciation where Service Fabric is. I would still have a chance for probably a few questions here at the end, but thank you very much. Let's take questions from the audience, and then I can wait outside here afterwards. Yes? Yes. Yes. Are you talking about how does App Service and Service Fabric fit together? Is that what you're asking? I mean, with Service Fabric and with App Services, in both those cases, you can build new applications from scratch, yes? App Services, though, very much focuses on websites and how you build websites and building around those things. They've done a great of integration there about how you can bring containers to run those websites. But you know, typically, that's just sort of the approach they take. You can run website-type applications on Service Fabric, but it's a more general purpose in that you can build any sort of service that you want where you can run it as an executable inside containers inside those. And so you're building a microservices application around those things. So both of them are sort of cloud native in their regards if you bring new code from scratch. Both of them as well sort of have the modernization journey. But App Services is more focused on the website side of things. Service Fabric is more focused on building a microservices architecture where you scale out and build a service around those. Hopefully that sort of answers your question around those things. Okay, yes. Yes. Okay, so that's a good question as well. When I go Service Fabric as opposed to Kubernetes. So, you know, we at Microsoft have deeply invested in sort of both those platforms. In fact, App Service, Service Fabric, and Kubernetes are the sort of the application platforms. App Service focuses a lot on sort of the web side of things. Kubernetes is very much focused on engaging with a lot of the open source Linux side of the world of things, particularly that side I'm focused at the moment. They treat themselves as a container orchestrator, and then very much after that, you go off and stitch together all the things that you want to put together in that. So you very much have to go off and find, you know, what runtimes you're going to focus inside there, how you're going to host you know, a front-end gateway yourself, and it's very much still build yourself a little bit more of a platform on top of the orchestrator. So if you think about building a microservice application itself, there are many things you have to do, of which an orchestrator is part of that. So, you know, Kubernetes fits into that world of effectively you're more stitching together other pieces of the platform, and then you build your application on top of that. Service Fabric runs on Windows and Linux. We've integrated more offerings around the overall platform itself so that, you know, we provide you built-in runtimes, Visual Studio integration, very much focused on the Windows side of things as much as the Linux side. The Kubernetes side is a bit limited at the moment that they don't run Windows containers at the moment. It's just the Linux side of things. Service Fabric has Windows and Linux built into it all. The Kubernetes side will get there as well eventually with Windows containers, but I think that's much longer on their roadmap. But effectively, you know, they think of themselves as a container orchestrator, open source community. You go off and build things around all of that. And so some more of the support comes from that side as well of things. We're effectively investing in all those platforms because we realize that different people come at it at different angles. Certainly, if you come at it from a .NET Windows perspective, we like to think that Service Fabric is the best choice around that by far. Saying that, you know, we have plenty of Linux clusters as well. The Kubernetes sort of have it reversed. They have more Linux customers by far today because that's where they come from. And, well, virtually no Windows today because they're not there at the moment, but they will get there. So I think those are sort of two directions. But yes, it's kind of a choice of different platform. I think what you'll see, particularly with Service Fabric Mesh and the conversation that where it's all going to go overall, is that orchestrators are not that interesting and that you're trying to get to building applications, which is why things like Mesh are so important, because when you get to that level, you don't actually know Service Fabric Mesh actually runs on Service Fabric for all intents and purposes. You know, it could run on Kubernetes for all you know, really, but it doesn't. But effectively, you know, that's the level of abstraction that you want to try and get to. So I think you'll see over time these conversations about choices of orchestrating things like that sort of go away, and it's how you build those applications. And some of those things emerge in the community as well through like the CNCF project, And then, of course, we're driving things through the products we build inside Azure. Hopefully, I gave you an answer to your question. I think I'm being kicked out. So what we'll do is I'm going to move outside. Let's go and stand outside. We'll answer a few more of the questions there. And we also have a booth downstairs. Please come to our booth. We have lots and lots of people there who can answer some of your questions. Thank you. So.